And 1, and 2, and 3. There's the 3 of us.
Hello.
Welcome, everybody,
Those
to another amazing episode of This Uncanny Earth, episode 272. That's 272 for your viewing pleasure. As always, I am your immaculate host, Robert Solomon. With me over here, right there, that's right, is Spider with his Metal Massacre shirt. I don't know what he's massacring, but it's metally. And underneath us, the guy right here is Steven the Intern.
Yep.
So we're going to let him hang out for another week, I guess. I don't know. We said we can let him hang out. Gentlemen,
well, those bathrooms won't scrub themselves.
They will not. And we make him scrub the bathrooms. We make him go outside. We make him do all the good stuff that he...
Every single tile with my toothbrush.
And his tooth, he has to use that same toothbrush to brush his teeth.
Yep.
People are going to...
Yeah.
You treat him terribly. Well, that's the point, genius. You know, you got to treat the interns poorly. That builds credit or self-esteem. Either or.
Could I just say something real quick?
You can always say something, but don't make it real quick.
Okay. Oh, yeah, that was a mistake the other day, wasn't it? Yeah. So I noticed with your name, Solomon, if you just changed that third O to an A, you could become Solo Man.
I know. That sounds like an anime that I'm not going to watch.
Yeah. I mean, I figured if no one else was going to make dad jokes, I may as well bring them back.
Speaking of anime and not related at all to the show, I'd never even really watched the show much, but I know some of you guys watched it. How about the former creator of Dragon Ball?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, Akira Toriyama.
Yeah.
Rest in peace to Akira Toriyama.
I got to give him respect. I mean, I don't watch any of that stuff, but I mean...
He made something that everyone has respected.
You never watched Dragon Ball Z at all in your entire existence?
I've seen probably an episode here and there, and, you know, I never sat down and was like, I want to watch this, but I know how big of a thing it is, and I know a lot of people out in the world are upset about it, I figured some respect. Some respect.
I mean, he was also the designer for the characters on Chrono Trigger. So we can't forget big too. He did work for Chrono Trigger. Yeah, it is.
Yeah, that's huge.
That's crazy. You're the first friend I've ever had that didn't watch Dragon Ball. That's weird.
And I'm the second.
Yeah, like I know some of the episodes. Like I know about Majin Buu and stuff like that when he was big.
Well,
Marshmallow
here's the thing. Steve, I can give him a pass because he's a young kid, so he doesn't understand the importance of getting out of work to be home by like 4:30 so you can watch the next episode of Dragon Ball, only for them to restart the series so that the animators had time to draw it or translate it for the American audience. All right, so until you understand that pain.
I would like to speak on one anime pain I had as a child.
What was this, like 10 years ago when you were a child?
I'm 30 now, believe it or not. I know, I shaved. Yeah. I look like a child again. But no, Yu Yu Hakusho. I got to watch the first season, and I loved it. And then the second season came on, and they moved the time slot from 9 to 10 p.m., which was right in line with my bedtime.
His bedtime is still 10 p.m.
Yes.
We make him go to bed early. He's Steven the Intern. He has to work his way back into our good graces. Even though he's done nothing wrong. He's been a fantastic person. Real quick, though, I want to give a big hope everything gets better and works out for James. He's in the hospital with his mom, so hopefully his mom is doing well and he's doing well and they're both doing well. So
we're sending out our healing energies.
He's mentioned once or twice in the chat in the past that she's been in and out with some trouble. So let's think positive about that.
However you do, energies, prayers, but thinking positive, whatever it is, send it out to our buddy James. Anyways, gentlemen. So Spider and I, we go way back with the Missing 411. And in fact, we had Ginger Ralph on a couple years back. And she was big into like David Paulides. And so let me say this before we get into David Paulides, he's a very polarizing figure. I'm not here to disrespect his work, nor will I disrespect his work. I enjoy both the Missing 411 and the Missing 411 Hunted. No matter what you say about him, if you think he's a fraud, you don't think he's a fraud, I'm not going to speculate nor answer any of those
outside the scope of the topic,
because I don't know him personally. So let's just get that out of the way. No, this is not a David Paulides bashing seminar. No matter what you might hear. So,
because can I say something too?
Yes. Well, I don't know. Do you have the intern bell?
I don't know. We got to make sure that your word limit is within reason because interns only get a certain amount of time and space.
I'll keep it short. I just wanted
have
to
the
say
intern bell. We sent you the intern bell in the mail. Anyways, go ahead. You're good.
Okay. I was going to say that I was listening to that episode earlier today to get more information on the subject once again. And I actually enjoyed the way that you discussed everything and, all the topics and everything about him.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
About the, how he's related to Bigfoot research and all that as well. Yeah. But I'll let you get into that.
So the missing 411, as many people know, is the missing people that go missing in national parks all across the United States and the world. It's not just limited to the United States. It's limited to the world because I don't know about other planets. I don't know if there's people going missing on other planets. I'm not dead. Now, Steven the intern, he's on some planet. I don't know what planet you're on because the moon is
to... The moon.
No, the moon's to your right. That's impossible. You're lying. Don't lie, Steven
I'm on
the intern.
The second moon.
That's no moon.
My notes, I found out it was also in the Philippines, Brazil, and Portugal.
Really? Nobody's gonna compliment that joke? No. You all suck. This is the worst group of people I've ever had the displeasure of doing a show with. Star Wars reference was perfect. That's no moon. Meanwhile, I got spread like I'm not gonna do it.
Some years ago, I might have jumped all over it, but
I never watched Star Wars.
Me and Star Wars are just not the friends we used to be back in the day.
I've only watched the new Star Wars, not the old ones.
I don't like both of you. That's interesting. I'd talk about that. So the one thing that kind of groups it all together is the fact that people are going missing in national parks. I want to get into the meat and potatoes of this. Now, what do you have for us today, Stephen? Because I'm kind of... First of all, do you have the staircases in the middle of the woods thing?
Yes.
Why don't you go ahead and start with that, and then we'll break into the missing 411 after you get through with that, because I have some theories on that as well.
Okay. So I was doing some research on these people that are claiming to see staircases in the woods, and I can't make up my mind if it's even real or not, because it originated as essentially a creepypasta on the No Sleep Reddit.
No Sleep Reddit is fabulous.
Yes. Love it. Now is where a lot of people first found out about it. But even though it was started on Reddit, random people started posting about it happening in the Philippines, Brazil, and Portugal as well. Now here's the story. Some of these stairs look brand new, while others are old and crumbling. So one of the theories is the ones that are older and crumbling, they might be like from old houses that have been destroyed and stuff. And I've been trying to find pictures online, and a lot of them do look like, strange old houses or something like that. But they also have clean staircases, which are especially strange because it's almost like someone is coming by and cleaning them, and there's no leaves or no bugs, nothing. So that one's a bit interesting. But here's one theory I thought sounded really interesting, because there's stories of people going onto these staircases and they'll lose time or, whatever. Or there's theories about it being interdimensional travel because staircases are so symbolic. And the one I like, looks like Solomon has something to say. Solo Man.
One thing I wanted to point out to you that I find to be fascinating is the fact that I've also researched this a long time ago. This is a very long time ago. And the clean staircases are what get me, because I actually there was a house near my old home growing up with my parents when I was younger. And it was a turn of the century home that just went into disrepair because they didn't have the access. It was a home on the canal. And me and Spider, and when he jumps back in here, me and Spider have both walked the canal multiple times. We've been up and down the canals, the locks, and there's a house that sat on the road on the way to the canal. Well, the house was in disrepair when I was young. We're talking like 11, 12, and I used to go down there, and there was woods behind my parents' house, and it would go down a hill. There's a house. And it was an old house, like the roof, everything was gone except the staircase and like the downstairs. Very fascinating. So I wanted to say that the idea of these staircases is twofold. One, it's either just an old house, or two, it's what I call a bleed over effect, meaning that it is from another reality that we do not see nor can partake in, but by chance we are in the place at that time. And I'm reminisced to say that is much like the ghost trains that I've talked about, where for that split second, it kind of fades into our reality. And I do believe that we have bleed over effects. I do believe that we, if you ascribe to string theory, I think bleed over effect is very important in that regard.
Now that's different from a death echo, right? Like when someone dies, or in a tragic way, their death replays on a loop. That's something different, right?
Now,
what you're talking about?
Potentially. It depends on how you look at the energy and everything.
Yeah. Because a death echo wouldn't mean anything in terms of their death replaying. What that means essentially is that the person died in a horrible way and the energy from that effect has laid there and still stays there, but that person has moved on. I don't believe that people stay behind when they die. And that's no disrespect to spiritualists and things that believe in this. I personally don't. It's a personal thing, obviously. But I think that we move on to the next life. I don't think we can stay here because I think the energy goes. And energy can't be destroyed, so the energy moves to the next viable location. Yes. Anyways, continue. My apologies.
Oh, no,
also, I'm going to interrupt you now, too, because now this is just a...
Well, that's the co-host, so he's allowed to.
The idea of the staircase thing may actually be from a little bit sooner. It may actually have come from a book. Called House of Leaves. Now, House of Leaves is a difficult book. Not just because of the subject matter, because there's some stuff in there that, there's this part with a dog, and I'm not going to talk I'm not going to touch it.
Don't do it. Don't.
Because I'm a pet person, I have to skip that part every time after reading it the first time.
Yeah, it's a very sad aspect.
The whole thing is about this guy. He's basically reading about, it's a book inside of a book. He's reading about this thing that's slowly making him go crazy. But the thing about it is, it's called House of Leaves, and it deals with a family. And I'm going to have to give you the beginning part before I get to the relevant part.
Okay.
At the beginning part, he finds the book inside the book is about a family who they open up a door in their house one day, and there's an empty room there that they've never known about. It's like a hallway, and it's just a hallway that goes to just a blank wall, and it's not on the plans. They can't access it any other place. You can't chop through one of the other walls and get in there. You can only get through it through this door, and the hallway is just long enough that it won't echo. No matter where you are in the hallway, there's no echoes because the sound won't reverberate right. And over time, that hallway splits into more hallways and staircases and an entirely different building.
Labyrinth?
And basically it just keeps on going. It's a lot like the back rooms. And
nice.
That's probably an influence with how that came along. The thing later in the book, though, that's relevant to our discussion is that as the guy outside of that book is reading about the history and things, he starts making connections. And one of the explanations for the missing Roanoke colony in the book, it's fictional, of course.
Yeah.
But one of the explanations there is that somebody found a staircase out in the middle of that area that was exactly like this hallway in this guy's house that blossomed into the thing. And as you went down it, you entered into this complex, and it's all the same color. It's all this charcoal gray black with no light. Everything's flat. There's no curves. There's no nothing. It's just all angular rooms and passages and staircases, just infinite different places. And so a lot of the idea of this, not to say that people aren't seeing them, but possibly the original posts of it may have come from some people encountering something similar to what was described in the book. You go out there in the middle of nowhere, and there's this featureless staircase. There's no identifiers. There's no nothing. There's just no details. It's just there. There's no reason for it to be there. It leads to a place that makes no sense. You lose track of time. You lose track of everything because there's no light. There's no way to pass anything. And so I thought that was an interesting parallel, and it predates some of the Reddit posts and things. And it was
a
lot of the people who would probably start a post like that are probably the sort of people who would read the book.
Okay.
Because it's the type of fringe kind of novel that gets in your head like that.
And how you said it looked like the staircase from his house. A lot of people will say that these staircases, like you said, look like they were just like building a Sims house, and then they just cut and pasted a staircase from some random person's house or something. And go ahead.
No identifying features, no details. It's just like plain old steps.
Yeah. And another theory is that they might actually be like the modern day fairy circles, because they're like, humans are so curious. It's like, oh, let's go check out the stairs, like moths to a flame.
Mm-hmm.
But
I would 100%.
Yeah, actually, as you were saying that it might actually be an older theory, I actually heard another one when I was doing my research. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Here it is. Supposedly, they found a story from the 1940s from a man who claims to work for the CDC, and they went to investigate. It was only supposed to last a few weeks, but instead it lasted 6 months. This was a story about people camping near cattle mutilations when they found stairs on the farm, but the farmer was unaware of these stairs. And they said the stairs were giving off some sort of frequency. In the next 2 days, the stairs disappeared and reappeared 50 meters away. So they tried to sample part of the staircase, but the wood structure was harder than steel, and none of it could be chipped off for sampling. But they were never able to discover what or who was transmitting this frequency signal, or why. And this all took place around the same time of the Roswell crash in New Mexico and near the same area.
I want to say something. Why do we have all of these weird occurrences that happens in the late 40s? We're talking right after World War II. Okay. We're talking right after Einstein, the bomb, Oppenheimer, all of these things, right, happen. All of these anomalies start happening. It's almost like we have shifted reality based on the principle of nuclear fission that has created this effect, right? You have a lot of the things, you have a lot of aliens, you have a lot of cryptids, you have a lot of Earth's tonal frequency changed after those bombs dropped. Because we have to remember, the bombs were not just dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
On Earth.
They were bombed on Bikini Atoll. They were dropped in Nevada. They were dropped all along the world, right? And these are weapons that have the power to basically move mountains, essentially. And don't forget, our Earth has wobbled now. We're on a wobble because of the tsunamis that happened years ago. So we have to understand something here. These things that are happening are basic changes to Earth. Now, what happens is the residual frequencies also change. So we have frequency changes, tonality changes. These things are happening on our planet, and we see an increase in the 40s. And we had a conversation, and I want Spider to talk about this here in a second. We were discussing this flying saucer or UFO that is in Norway at the bottom of a lake that Spider had posted in our personal chats.
Also,
and it's
around
the same bottom year. Of a lake. Go ahead.
I said also around the same year.
Also, and that's why I told you in the chat. I said, was it, because you asked me? You said, was that during World War II? I said, that's after World War II. Yeah. World War II is 39 to 45. So 39 to 45. There's a point in the timeline where Hitler has acquired something. He doesn't know how to use it, but this is mirroring from our conversation last week when we talked about Antarctica. The Nazis had a base in Antarctica. They called it New Schwabenland.
That's a fact, right?
Yes, the Nazis did have a base in Antarctica. What they did with it, nobody really knows. Oddly enough, everybody has went down there, so everybody has a stake to claim in Antarctica. But what I am curious about is, what did they pull? What technologies there? What happened there? Because in the 47, after World War II, we start having anomalous effects. We start having these things happen to our planet. The increase, the rise of seeing sightings. And this is different because if we go pre-industrialization, that's when you see more of the fairy folk, the fae folk, your more traditional cryptids. However, after the atomic bomb is dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, you get your aliens, you get your Mothmen, you get your Flatwoods Green Monster, you get all of these more, I wouldn't say nefarious creatures, but I would more put them in the category of I wouldn't mess with them type of beings. That's where before industrialization, fairies would help you. Fairies would live in your home. The fae folk would live in your home, and
they were tricksters and
gifts.
pranksters.
Yes, but after that bomb drops, something changes. Our atmosphere changes. Our world changes. And then when the Hadron Collider's fired up twice now, that bad boy's been fired up twice. And where people say that it's moved us into another reality, maybe it has, maybe it hasn't. But what I think of your staircase is, I think it's a bleed over effect. It's almost like deja vu, but manifesting itself. Now, does it manifest itself because we will it into existence?
Like a tulpa.
Like a tulpa, yes. It's a staircase tulpa, basically.
Yes, I love that theory.
But because the human mind is very powerful. Like when you have people that pray and they get devoted and the energy is there, the energy has been recorded. Monks have been recorded, their energy, the ability for them to break things that most human beings could not break, their ability to do things most humans cannot do. Brahmin priests in India, same basic concepts. What can we will and what can we not? So sorry, I went on a tangent there. But
oh no, I love that because you actually gave me a perfect point to make about something that may or may not be related, but I really wanted to mention because of what you were asking. I actually, in my own personal research outside of the show, I have actually heard a theory about why all this stuff changed. What I heard is from my own personal research, obviously nothing can be confirmed, but one theory I've found is they think that, and I don't know if this has anything to do with string theory. Maybe you can confirm that or deny that, whatever. But one theory is that the atomic bomb was so powerful that when we dropped it, it actually affected stuff somewhere in outer space and sent a signal out that the aliens were able to track it down and find where we are.
That's a theory that alien species. It's part of there's a whole subculture of people who believe that there's like a federation, like not like Star Trek per se, but there's like a whole bunch of alien species out there that are all banded together. They've all made peace with each other, and they're like, we're here for galactic peace, and we can't let anybody disrupt the peace. And they actively watch for cultures that have advanced to the point of developing the nuclear capacity, because then they're like, oh, we come down, we got to warn them. Okay, you've got this now. Don't mess it up.
I wouldn't say just in that capacity. I wouldn't say nuclear. I would say utilizing the resources of whatever planet they are on. Because what is nuclear to us on this planet might not be the same thing for another species on another planet. We can only play by the rules that we live by here on this Earth at present. We can't play by the rules on Mars. We can't play by the rules on Jupiter or Venus or any other planet but ours. So we have to live by the rules, the chemical equations, everything else that exists in our planet in our way. However, that's not to say that the whatever is out there is not having a close eye upon us. And to sum up what Craig said, oh, there it is. I left it out again. What Spider said.
The Men in Black. The Men in Black are knocking on the door right now.
They, the Galactic Federation ideology is that we can't meet them. They know we're here. They've let our upper echelon folks know, like, what was his name? Eisenhower. Truman and Eisenhower and that cat right there. That cat knows. He's seen some stuff. That, hey, you can't join us. Not yet. Your people they're still warring. We don't want you, because what I have ascertained from the whole like Galactic Federation is that people believe that these species that have joined the Galactic Federation reap the benefits of said federation. However, we don't reap those benefits because we are a very warlike species, and they are afraid we will 100%, without a doubt, cause a mass problem. So,
and
that being said, go ahead.
that's more the essence of what I think I meant to say, is less the actual vehicle of it, and more that they see, oh, here's a massive energy expenditure. They're capable of harnessing this massive amount of energy abruptly all of a sudden. So now that you're at that technological stage, we got to tell you, don't do that, because you'll if you want to be part of us, part of the galaxy at large, the universe, peace, everything like that, then this is bad, because you'll destroy yourself, you'll destroy us, you'll destroy whatever. So it's less, like I said, the specific, the nuclear itself. It's any sort of massive expenditure of technology that could prevent you from being a productive member of society. Now, I don't really follow that. I'm not into that whole utopian, everything is great out in space thing myself.
Same.
But that's the gist of that theory.
So let's dive into this real quick. Let's get into the topic we were going to discuss before we're busy talking about Earth Galactic Federations and all this Jupiter jazz. Upgrade your gray matter, because one day it may matter.
One last thing.
Yes.
Real quick, real short. Some people believe that these staircases, because they move and they leave burn marks, might actually be the stairs that they use to get into the UFOs, because aliens apparently need stairs to get into the UFOs. And also, there are stories about how the staircases are related to the missing 411, and sometimes missing people are found near the staircases. And now, there you go.
Good segue. Good segue. So the missing 411 was brought to the attention of the masses by one David Paulides. Now, however you feel about David Paulides as a polarizing figure himself, that doesn't necessarily take away the fact that a lot of people go missing in national parks across the United States. Some, yes, they just get lost. And, places like the Pacific Northwest, if you get lost there, you're probably not going to get found, because it is a dense, vast wilderness. So, and places like Aokigahara, where if you go off the path, everything looks the same. So you're not going to be able to get back on the path with everything looking the same. Now, it's not so much that, because you have to ascribe that a lot of the missing persons cases are people that just went off the path. They weren't supposed to, they did. But there are other instances, children being with their families, and the family walks up a bit and the child is taken, just gone. We've had both Chris George and Les Odell, two past guests, that were walking along in the woods and were almost transported to another woodland area. Chris George said that he was in a forest once and then came out into a place that had different flora and fauna than what he came out. And he knew the park as a park ranger. He
was a park ranger.
He knew that park like the back of his hand. So he's going to know what places, wait a minute. And he said the fauna and flora was so different that it made him think twice, like, where am I? Les Odell, or a good friend, Les Odell. Same thing. When he was younger, was walking around forest, ended up in a whole other place.
Near his house, wasn't it?
I think it was either near his house, or he was visiting a family member for.
I remember listening to that episode
for an extended point of time. So this concept that the 411, and 411 meaning information, like the number you would call for information, the cases themselves are very fascinating, because there's a lot of cases of people that knew the wilderness, that knew their area, the hunters especially, that knew the area, and would do crazy things like taking off their boots and footprints leading away with their boots next to the fire and their clothes folded up, their guns left there. We're talking hunters, man, in the middle of the woods.
The one guy without his boots and everything, without any of his gear, they found his gear one place, and they found him walking dazed miles and miles and miles away, like in no practical way.
Like hundreds of miles, wasn't it?
That he could have walked in that distance in the short amount of time from when he went missing.
Then
but there he was, trudging along.
Not to mention the other case where the guy disappeared and showed up at somebody's house like 8 to 10 years later, acting like it had been nothing, acting like it had been no time that had passed. Now, in a forest, unless you know how to survive in the woods, and most of us don't, I'll be point blank about that. The three of us couldn't. Like, the three of us together probably could survive pretty well in the woods.
We'd figure it out.
Each of us on our own, probably not. None. Like, I don't know how to hunt. I'd have to make bow and arrow. I don't know what plants you could eat and not eat. I'm gonna eat fish because that'd be the closest thing that I could probably do. But I don't know how to degill it.
Because you got to cook it because it's going to have parasites.
And I don't know how to hunt. I don't know how to remove fur from a deer to cook the meat. I don't know what to eat, what not to eat. So to sit here and say that we would survive, we'd probably all be dead. But together, I think we could probably make a go of it. But the interesting aspect is the people that have gone missing are people that knew how to survive in the woods. People that go out in the woods for fun and go out with nothing. Just a gun, a knapsack, a sleeping bag. A lot of the time you have to remember too, unless you're going to pay big bucks.
Yeah.
GPS expensive. Aren't cheap and that kind of, because you could buy a satellite phone that will get you the signal you want, but you're going to pay some serious money for a satellite phone. These are people that just either went out on jaunts. There's a couple where the kid, and there's been a couple cases where I believe it was more foul play by the family. There's one instance of a child where the relative was a less than reputable human being. I won't say the word, but he wasn't a good person, letter beginning with a P. Yeah, I think that's what happened there. But then there's other ones where the family's walking with the child and the child dips out of sight for a split second and they look and he's gone. And he's gone.
Like hundreds of miles.
He's not, or there was an instance where there was a child up on a rock of ridges and a giant Bigfoot-esque creature was seen picking the child up. The child was fine. The child was found a couple days later. This is the issue I think we're running into, and I have to wonder if, in fact, because of what we have done to the earth, and I'm not going to sit over here and say I'm some big environmentalist and we should do this, that, and the third. What I do think, however, is that if these things are happening, and I know a lot of our Bigfoot friends like Les and Daniel and Bill Rigby and all them, they've gone out in the woods. They hear these things. Bigfoot has been seen by these things. There's been instances of military, paramilitary, all these groups going out like
heavily armed, right?
Yes. The FBI even showed up at a couple of these, and the FBI doesn't show up. They don't show up unless it's something deadly serious. They've had Army Rangers go into the woods with M16s. What is out there that they're not telling us? What is in these forests? Because the FBI usually doesn't show up for a missing persons case. They don't show up for a missing persons case. Rangers, Army Rangers, men that have lived in this environment are out there looking for random Joe Schmo, not looking for the president's daughter like in Resident Evil 4, not looking for a head of state, a person of Congress, a person of interest. This would be like they would go looking for one of us.
I kind of feel like most of those Congress people, they would just leave out there.
I mean, I would leave them out there, but that's not the point of the conversation now, right? Is it? But they would go looking for people like us. But
now here's some facts too, because the national parks,
please,
you don't really understand the scope of the national parks until you've kind of seen the numbers. We have, just in the United States alone, because there's national parks all over the world.
Yes.
Right? Here in the United States, we have 63.
63.
That's huge areas of land. Now, that makes up 2.19% of the entire country. Now, that might not seem like a whole lot, but imagine, just remember the size of the United States.
Yes.
It's a big place.
Big place.
And that covers 210,000 kilometers, which is, because I calculated. Let me just put in whatever accent that I don't know what that's all about.
What did you calculate it?
It's about 130,000 plus miles of just
that's a lot
wilderness. Because remember, the national parks, they're wilderness. You're not allowed to do things.
That doesn't equate to what people don't understand is that doesn't what they don't take into account, I should say, is the coal mining, the places that are underground, the towns that came up in eras like me and Spider were talking about with the locks that don't exist anymore, or that are run down, or stagecoach trails that don't exist, but the ghost towns that are still there have decayed to such a point that the forest took it back, because nature will take stuff back. It will take it back. The show, The World Without People on History Channel talked about what happens so many days after people. When you get so far, you're going to have nature will take back what people don't do, and it'll eat it up. And we've seen that. There's towns in Pennsylvania that were dangerous, and they've called it Silent Hill because of just how sheer amount of the sulfur fumes and things like that would kill people that live there. So they up and left. We talk about
on
the
fire.
place. Yes.
It's underground on fire.
Yes. There's a place in Japan, the whole island that was for like mining and things like that people just abandoned. They up and left. You can't go there because the government has a tight hold, but I get it. And that's another place. And so you're going into woods or wooded areas that might have once been towns. We don't know. We don't know what was there at one point, what wasn't there at one point. Me and Spider have went to places and saw what looked to be the structural remains of a home, but it's not very high. And the home has been gone for longer than me and Spider have been on this earth. And that's the thing. You get into that aspect of going into these places. Okay, sure, people disappear, right? People disappear all the time. People disappear in forests all the time. Once we rule out the idea that, okay, here's somebody went in, they decided to go off the beaten path. They shouldn't have, because a lot of times they'll tell you, and Ohio isn't a place where you're going to get lost in the woods very easily. You're going to find a way out at some point. You're going to find a way. The best way to go is always to follow water, because water will always lead you out of a place. But Ohio, we don't have dense forests. We have forests, but at some point you're going to find your way out of them. But the Pacific Northwest or Upper New York, places like that, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, these are dense forests. These are dense forests, and people are going missing in them. Experienced trackers, experienced hunters going missing. Why? What is making these people disappear? Is it anomalies? Is it slip space ruptured anomalies that just happen to exist in that second or in that brief window? Or are they going missing because they're falling into a mine shaft, which could very much be possible. We don't know what is around,
even just a cave system that we haven't found yet. Like Kentucky, a lot of there's plenty of national parks in Kentucky. Yeah. And they tell you sometimes, like in certain mountainous areas, they tell you don't just go walking around out here, because the cave systems, a new one could open up.
Yeah.
At different points, and you wouldn't see it because there'd be the overgrowth and things would be blocked, and you could just walk right down a shaft in some place and just get stuck someplace. It might not even be very far down. It might only be like 20, 30 feet down, but that's still enough for nobody to see you, because all that soil is absorbing the sound.
Yep.
There's nobody for miles up there, so these things aren't a joke.
So, gentlemen, what do you think? What do we think the missing 411 is? If we rule out the idea that people wander into mine shafts or they wander into cave system, which they very well could, and I could see that for a majority, but what do you gentlemen think about folks that are army folks, that are hunters, that know the layout of the land, that know these cave systems exist, that know these mine shafts exist? What about them? What do you think happens to them?
I think there's got to be something out there that they know about, like you said, that we don't. And I don't know if this means anything or what it might mean, but I also wanted to mention that I heard that a lot of the missing 411 cases, especially in the cave systems, actually line up with ley lines. Have you found out about that? Have you heard anything about that?
No.
Well, that kind of goes along to a similar theory that we've talked about before, that was again highlighted in a book that we always bring up all the time, called American Gods. It's tied to the same reason that people build things on ley lines. It's because
power.
You have a feeling that there's something here.
Yes.
You don't know what it is, but it's influencing you. It's like the tides. It's like the pull of the moon. It's things that affect your psyche, and you're like, oh, I'm drawn here.
Yes.
It's one of the reasons probably why the suicide forest in Japan gets so many of that, because there is something, some kind of sense that gets to us, and it causes something in the brain to be like, I'm thinking about this now.
Yes.
Normal, healthy people who just suddenly go like, oh man, like now I'm just thinking about this. And this is a similar phenomenon. You might get led like, oh, I bet there's some kind of curiosity leading me down this path here. And then you've disappeared.
Yes. Yes. So what do you think it is? Where do you think that trackers and things like that, where do you think they're ending up?
I think another dimension maybe is a good idea.
Why?
Like because why haven't we found them? Where have they gone? And why are we not finding any of the people?
And that's the key. Not finding. And here's the thing. Because they're not finding ripped clothes, they're not finding shoes, they're not finding the weapons, they're not finding paper, they're not finding camping supplies. You know, a lot of these guys that go out into the woods, I don't mean to interrupt you, but a lot of the guys that go into the woods and they backpack for days, there's little parts, there's little fires they have left that, okay, here's a fire that was here. You could tell that the fire was made. Now, some people might go out to the woods and not want to be found. Maybe they got something going on in their life and they prefer the wilderness and they don't want to be bothered with civilization again. I get that. Maybe some people want to go out and die in the woods. Yes. Not die in the woods, but go out in the wilderness. Obviously, yes. My whole thing about this is, and this is what boggles my mind, is the people that are trained in woodland adventures. Folks that could survive, that has been on record as surviving in the woods. These are people that are leaving gear behind and walking away from it. Walking away from their own boots in temperatures that would pretty much kill normal people because it's cold. They're leaving their jackets. They're leaving their boots. They're going off hiking in the opposite direction of a fire that they made, or something has scared them away from that fire. And it's not something that is, I believe personally, susceptible to gunfire. Because if you got a gun all the way out there, a coyote or something, you can shoot a coyote. It's going to die. If you hit a coyote, you're pretty much going to kill it. And it'll scare the other ones. They're running from something different. Something that has been out there for a very, very, very long time. Is it Bigfoot? That's been a popular theory based on some eyewitness accounts that they saw a Bigfoot-like creature on the scene. And it's also something that people have said that the forest goes oddly silent, you know. But the thing is, we don't have a lot of like Bigfoot's on the murder, right? They're not out there killing people willy-nilly. This is something different. This is something that I don't think is easily explained. I think it's something that exists, or it's a parallel dimension. And I know Spider has something. So what do you got?
I was figuring I wasn't going to interrupt. I was going to wait till you're finished. I was going to pull a Kanye. I'm going to let you finish.
We're all excited tonight.
But an interesting point that I just got to thinking about is a lot of the missing 411 stuff has parallels with other incidents across the world that aren't necessarily from national parks, but are also in equally remote places. And that's one of the keys. The thing about national parks is once you get designated as national park, a lot of things are prohibited. Nobody's allowed to live there. There's a vast lack of human contact and comforts and technology and society. Now, right now, there's a lot of controversy with drilling being allowed, things like that. We're not really going to approach that so much, but that doesn't go for the entire area of the parks. So you have all this vast wilderness that some group could potentially be like, this is the perfect area for us to do these things that we don't want people to know about, experiments or whatnot. And it draws parallels to things that we've talked about, like the Dyatlov Pass incident in Russia.
Inside, yeah.
Because that could clearly be almost a similar situation to a missing 401 incident, because it was relatively experienced people. They'd gone on hikes before. They knew what to do.
Yeah.
And then you get the same thing in places like in South America. You get places in like the Amazon where you get experienced teams, especially in like the late 1800s, early 1900s. You have experienced teams of people who know about malaria. They know about diseases. They know about the wild animals. But they go to these places and something happens and the entire team is wiped out. Nobody ever sees them again. Nobody finds their tents. Nobody finds their camps. The jungle just reclaims all of it. And it's a very similar effect. And while we don't have that level of nature taking over at some of our national parks can be pretty darn dangerous. Like, you got to think, the most publicly accessible national park is Yellowstone.
Yeah.
And it is a set of super volcanoes underneath that could go off at any time.
And we're all dead.
Like, it's world destroying, but there's thousands of people every year that go there for tourism just to walk around and see the place. And that's one of the places that we know about, and we know how dangerous it is, but that's the one we let the people in. So think about the more remote ones that aren't the big tourist trap places that could have all kinds of things. And then you throw in the potential for either a human or an inhuman element performing some kind of clandestine activities there.
And I want to say something here. There's even been, just to kind of gravitate to his point a bit, there has been folks from across the border, the southern border, that come up into the national parks, backpack their way in, find a field or a flat piece of land, and start drug farming there. They will set up grow operations, and it's so far out of the way they can get away with it. So if we apply that same concept, what else is out there just lurking, And once again, it wouldn't be so bad if it wasn't such a high amount of people that go missing. And that wouldn't even be bad if it wasn't people that already knew the forests, that had lived there, that had traversed there, that were folks that did missions in Iraq and places like that where they got to survive. And you're telling me that they just leave their boots and go traipsing up north? They don't even go south where the water is. They don't follow the water down, because you follow the water, you go down, you're going to find civilization at some point. No, these people go up into this place, almost as if something has hypnotized them and calling them to their demise. That's what I don't. That's the one thing about the missing 401 that fascinates me the most, is the fact that these people aren't just your Johnny-come-latelys. These are people that know the forest. They're excellent hunters. They're excellent trackers. They're people that have lived in the forest, basically. They go out in the forest for fun to hunt deer or hunt some form or fashion of animal, and they're coming up missing by droves. Not just one or two here or there, and you have to wonder if it's an experiment, like Spider said. Like, if they're going out there and then they're like, cool, we got some people, we can experiment now. Because who's to say that there's not an underground labyrinth? There's not underground fortresses. There's not underground civilizations. Yeah. Yes.
Cabin fever. Cabin fever.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a goofy concept of the movie. But if you think about it, you're like, well, what if somebody actually is out there? It wouldn't take much to cover up an operation like that.
Not at all.
Make a small group of backpackers, spring breakers disappear. You know, it doesn't take much.
No, and here's the thing, like, especially if it's by cliffs or mountain ranges, you could throw those in caves that nobody knows about, because we haven't explored everything. And you go into a deep recess of a cave, get rid of all the stuff. And I think there's beings or creatures out there that know how to do this. They know how to maneuver, how to go through. This is their home, right? This is where they live. And I think we're dealing with something that is far more either nefarious or benign or malevolent, something. And the fact that park rangers have been hushed, the fact that your higher up FBI agents have been hushed, that's what does it. Not only is it the expert trackers or the expert hunters, but the fact that there's upper governing bodies that are coming in to investigate. Like,
Men in Black.
If the FBI comes in, when the feds come in, and the feds haven't let's just think about something quick. The feds have a 98% conviction rate. They can literally watch you for 10, 15 years and choose to convict you in the end of those 10 years if they have enough evidence. They will wait. So why are they out there looking for these people that they're not high cartel members. They're not high on the drug offense list. They're not serial killers. They're nothing. They're hunters. They're people like you and me that every day that's what we do, right? And you have FBI agents going out to look for them, or they show up in a town and say, hey, yeah, what's been going on here? And you have multiple jurisdictions looking for one person. One person. I don't get it. Something doesn't add up to me. And I think these national parks are holding a darker secret than what any of us have ever been told.
And when you said that maybe they're shooting at something bulletproof, I wanted to circle back around to that real quick.
Yes, please.
So I heard that some of these people, when they go missing, that, like you were saying, some of them are hunters and they leave their guns behind. And one theory was maybe they're being attacked by animals or birds. And it's like, what kind of giant bird would be able to attack you? And even if you did get carried off by some sort of giant animal or something, wouldn't you at least try to use your gun and attack it or fight back in some way?
There it is. That's the $1 million question.
And about the snow and cold weather, I heard a story about the missing 411 where this dude, was actually went missing, and there was no evidence that he was even anywhere. There were no tracks in the snow or anything. And it was it was 18, 19 degrees outside. And apparently from what I heard on my sources, it said that is cold enough that the snow will turn into a type of slush, which you should be getting 6 to 8 inches of tracks in that kind of snow.
Yeah. And there's nothing. But you'll have a fire that was made, or you'll have
how are they covering all that stuff up?
Or perfectly folded clothes, like you had put in the comments. Perfectly folded clothes,
from a child. A child will have their perfectly folded clothes, and they don't know how to do that.
Or a regular hunter, they'll put their boots in their clothes, and then they'll
be freezing cold.
Yes, or there'll be tracks leading away from the area. What are you running from? What is it that you've had to take your boots off and your clothes off and left your weapon behind to what are you afraid of? What are you
why did you take the time to fold them so neatly?
Yes, why are you folding your clothes? You are going in a life or death hypothermia-esque situation. Why are you leading folded clothes? They're not in disarray. They're not a shirt here or a pant here. They're folded and sitting on top of each other on top of boots with the gun right there.
Yeah.
Why are they running away from these things, and what is making them run? Is it a siren song?
Actually,
is it the equivalent of a siren song?
Speaking of that, that's a good theory. I mean, I did find a story, but to be full disclosure, it was entirely creepypasta, and I wasn't even going to mention it, to be honest. But speaking of people getting lured out into the forest, in the creepypasta, they said that it was a mimic, and that the mimics can actually lure people out into the forest like that by mimicking, the face of different people. But
they say that if you're in the Appalachian Mountains, don't answer if your name's called.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Don't listen to people screaming. Don't listen to cries for help. Don't listen to anybody that says your name. Don't talk. Don't do anything at night. Walk out.
Because if you turn around, it will get you.
Or if you say it's not even that. It's if you like whistling. You're not supposed to whistle in the Appalachian Mountains at night because they'll know where you're at. Who's they? Why do they got to know where you're at? And is it the same basic concept in every forest? Is it the same basic concept of don't do this? Don't whistle after dark. What is out there that we have been trying to suppress? And it might be a twofold thing. One, they don't want people to go missing, but on the other hand, they don't want a bunch of people out there traipsing around, messing up the park, firing off guns, doing this, doing that, and disturbing whatever entity it is. What if the entity requires so many people, and our government's got into a weird agreement like we did with the Greys, supposedly, where we allowed the Greys to come in and take people to experiment on them. Same basic concept. For me, I don't necessarily buy into that, but I do believe there's something out there that is ancient, that has been there long before any of us were here, long before any pilgrim ship arrived, European arrived, Native American arrived, any of them. There's something here, and what we've managed to do with our cell phone towers, which this is what I believe, because cell phone towers affect bees, they affect animals, like who's to say they don't affect other things? And we've pushed these things into the recesses of our national parks. So yes, they're going to be a little PO'd that they have to move so far out when they're so used to traversing the wilderness of the United States. That's what I think anyways. Take that for the grain of salt that is worth.
Yeah.
It's an interesting set of cases. I'll say that. It is an interesting set of cases.
Closing thoughts. What do you think the missing 411 is? And we could have went longer on this one because there's so many different theories. We'll start with Spider. What do you think it is, Spider? What do you think the missing 411 is?
I think it's a variety of things. I think there are a lot of mundane explanations, but things that still would sound pretty fantastic. But based on the size, the acreage, the just how empty these places are, there's so many things that could go wrong, even for somebody who's experienced. But at the same time, it does raise kind of the idea, because that there is so much we don't know about the planet, regardless of how long we've lived here, and there's so much we don't understand about remote hidden places, that there's bound to be something out there that we have never encountered before in a scientific way that is able to take advantage of us in some way. And while I don't know exactly what that is, I don't doubt that it exists. Not as some one specific thing, but as a category of just different experiences that we have not yet begun to understand.
Okay. Steven, your thoughts?
Basically, I agree with Spider, and I would like to add on to what he said. Yes, I do believe there is something out in the forest that we don't understand, and all the government agents going out into the forest so heavily armed like that, I don't think they're really looking for the missing people. I think they're looking for whatever it is that is happening to the missing people.
I would have to
cover it up.
I would have to agree with both of you. And I also would like to add, too, that I think that there is something that has been out there for longer than any of us have been alive, for longer than any American's been on this planet, for longer than the Europeans landed here, long before the Native Americans, and we're sharing it with whatever that is, or whatever race of beings that is. Because there's once the government gets involved, let's understand something here. Let's break something down. Once the government gets involved in anything, that means you have caught the attention of the government. If there's a guy that is just, using recreational drugs, let's say marijuana on his property, the cops might stop by, right? They're not going to have the government coming in for that, right?
Not the FBI.
Once you start moving in different weights of said illicit substances, now that you've caught the attention of the government. Why is the government getting the attention and going out into the woods as well, or showing up? Why do you have alphabet agencies showing up at regular precincts and saying, okay, we're going to go out too. We want to know what's going on. And they're going out full armed. They're not going out with a pistol. They're going out with M16s. They're going out with guns that have armor-piercing bullets. Why do you need armor-piercing bullets? What is out there that needs its armor to be pierced? This isn't a handgun would usually take out really any animal, even the thickest.
What about a bear?
That's what I'm saying. The thickest hide of a bear, you could still take out relatively easy with a 45. Okay. You're going to wound it. But these are guns that
unless it's cocaine bear.
Unless it's cocaine bear, yes. Ammo piercing rounds, man, or armor piercing rounds. Yeah. Pierce through armor. I'm not saying that the hides of animals aren't strong, but this is different. And you're sending out, agencies that only show up when there are high-end crimes happening or
like
something.
National threats, right?
Like the CIA, the FBI, those kind of institutions are showing up at these national parks. You have Army Rangers showing up, government-approved Army Rangers showing up at national parks. Why? Why is that happening? Because there's something out there, and I have to agree with Spider and you that it's something. It's something. Now, yes, I think a majority of missing person cases are people that just go out in the woods and get lost, and like Spider said, they might fall down a mine shaft or they might fall down a cave system. But then there's the ones like we said before that are trained. People that are trained in this, that know there's mine systems, that know they have to be careful where they walk. I just don't personally think that it's just people disappearing. I think there's a lot more to it.
And why do they leave nothing behind, too?
Why do they leave nothing behind? Why don't they find scraps of anything?
Not even
They don't find shell casings. No shell casings. So if they're, and these people are wandering off all willy-nilly, or they do find something and it's folded clothes over boots with a fire going. And I think Steven the intern has left us. So there, he's back again. It scratch his nose.
Yes.
Because we don't let him scratch his nose on air. We don't do that over here.
That would be very unprofessional.
Only established
folks like ourselves. Yes. Next week, we're going to be talking about dreams, nightmares, their meanings, and a couple other things like sleep deprivation. So I hope you guys are tuned into that.
I am going to be the test subject for the sleep deprivation part.
Well, don't make sure you have
within
good
reason
sleep for the show.
Within
make sure you have good sleep for the show. I don't care what you do, but you are legally owned by us now.
Yes.
So you have to do what we tell you. That's law. I want to thank, of course, Spider, who is right here, right there. I want to thank Steven, the intern underneath us. Gentlemen, this was a fantastic conversation. I'm looking forward to next week. We're going to be talking about nightmares and dreamscapes, some of those beautiful things in and between. Don't forget, end of the month, I will be in Sharon, Pennsylvania presenting. So if you have a chance to make it out to Bill Rigby's event, please do so. Also, we are trying to get to the Bigfoot Festival in the end of June down in West Virginia. We're trying to get Steven out there. We're going to get the whole shebang, the whole crew. The whole crew is going to be out there, we're hoping, if everything goes well. So stay tuned for that. And as always, why be boring when you can be uncanny? We will see you folks next week for an all-new episode of This Uncanny Earth with myself, Spider, and of course, Steven the intern. Hope you guys have a good night, and we'll see you later. Peace.